Have you ever wondered why, despite years of prayer and meditation, spiritual transformation seems to elude you? What if everything you've understood about one of Jesus' most profound statements has been fundamentally misinterpreted for centuries? When Jesus uttered those powerful words, "Be still and know that I am God," he wasn't simply suggesting we sit quietly and wait for divine intervention. Has this ever happened to you? You've created a quiet space, attempted to silence your thoughts, only to find yourself more frustrated than when you began. There's a reason for that, and it goes deeper than technique. For generations, millions of spiritual seekers have practiced what they believed was stillness, never realizing they were missing the transformative power behind these words. Joel Goldsmith, after decades of spiritual practice and helping countless individuals, discovered something revolutionary about this teaching that changes everything. The stillness Jesus spoke of isn't passive waiting. It isn't just the absence of noise. It's a profound state of conscious alignment with divine reality, a state where you're not separated from God, but recognizing your oneness with divine presence. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you understand spiritual practice. The noise that most prevents divine communion isn't in your environment. It's in your consciousness. That constant seeking, striving, and struggling creates a barrier between you and spiritual awareness. Your mind races with worries about tomorrow, regrets about yesterday, plans that may never materialize, and desires that feel endless. This mental chatter drowns out the still, small voice of truth that has always been present within you. What if the solution isn't trying harder, but recognizing what already is? Joel taught that true stillness occurs when the human mind becomes quiet enough for divine reality to impress itself upon your awareness. This isn't something you achieve through effort, it's something you allow through recognition. But before we continue this journey into the profound meaning of spiritual stillness, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, imagine, for a moment, what your life might look like if you could move through each day from a place of inner stillness that remains unshaken by external circumstances. Imagine accessing the infinite resources of divine mind that have always been present within you, just waiting to be recognized. The kingdom of God isn't somewhere in distant heavens, it's within you. But to access this inner kingdom, you must first understand what it truly means to be still. Not just physically quiet, but mentally and spiritually receptive. The divine isn't speaking to you through noise and drama, but through the quiet certainty that emerges when your personal thinking subsides. What if the greatest barrier to your spiritual growth isn't what you lack, but your inability to recognize what you already possess? What if true stillness isn't something you do, but something you allow? If you found value in these spiritual insights, hit that subscribe button to join our community of seekers exploring timeless wisdom together. Every subscriber becomes part of this journey of awakening. The secret to this spiritual revelation begins with understanding that when Jesus spoke of stillness, he was inviting us into a profound journey of inner discovery. This invitation transcends religious dogma or spiritual technique. It's a universal principle that applies to every human consciousness, regardless of background or belief. Think of your consciousness as a vast kingdom with infinite resources, wisdom, and possibility. When Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he wasn't speaking metaphorically. This inner kingdom contains everything you could possibly need or desire, not as future potentials to be achieved, but as present realities to be recognized through stillness. The transformation begins when you realize that stillness isn't something you create. It's something you allow by releasing the mental noise that obscures your awareness of what already is. This hidden truth has remained, veiled behind centuries of misinterpretation, keeping sincere seekers trapped in endless spiritual striving. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what prevents us from experiencing this inner kingdom. Most people live with their attention fixated on problems, constantly analyzing what's wrong, what's missing, or what hurts in their lives. Have you noticed how your mind gravitates toward the negative, even when much is going well? This isn't a personal failing. It's a collective mindset that keeps consciousness locked in the very frequency that created the problem in the first place. Joel Goldsmith's profound revelation was that spiritual stillness elevates you beyond this material perception. When you're truly still, your awareness rises above the limitations of problem-focused thinking into the consciousness where solutions already exist. This isn't positive thinking or wishful imagination. It's accessing a level of mind where wholeness is already established. Consider the impact of living from this elevated awareness. Instead of struggling to solve problems at the level where they appear, you access insights and resources from a higher plane of consciousness. The journey from material perception to spiritual awareness doesn't require years of arduous practice. It requires a simple but profound shift in where you place your attention. This is the revelation that transformed Joel's life and the lives of countless individuals he worked with. Problems that seemed insurmountable at the human level dissolved naturally when approached from spiritual stillness. Health conditions, financial struggles, and relationship challenges that had resisted years of conventional effort yielded to this higher awareness. The most remarkable aspect of this spiritual practice is that it works not by changing external conditions first, but by transforming your perception. When perception shifts, experience naturally follows. Your external world begins to reflect the stillness you've discovered within. Not because you've manipulated circumstances, but because you're seeing from a different level of consciousness. If you're resonating with this message about finding your inner kingdom, write in the comments, "Stillness is my doorway," so I know we're connecting on this journey together. Many people misunderstand stillness, believing it to be an empty mental state or the absence of thought. This misconception has created frustration for countless spiritual seekers who struggle to empty their minds, only to find thoughts constantly intruding. The breakthrough comes when you realize that true stillness isn't emptiness, it's receptivity. Think of your consciousness as a receiver rather than a creator. In genuine stillness, you become a clear channel for divine intelligence to flow through effortlessly. This shift in understanding revolutionizes your spiritual practice, because you're no longer trying to force yourself into an artificial state of mental blankness. Instead, you're cultivating an open receptivity to the wisdom that divine mind is already speaking. The analogy Joel often used was that of tuning a radio. The music is already broadcasting on every frequency. When you practice stillness, you're not creating the music, you're simply adjusting your inner dial to receive what is already being transmitted on the frequency of spirit. This perspective removes the strain from meditation and prayer, transforming them from effort into reception. What blocks this receptivity? Here's where Joel's insights become truly illuminating. The fundamental obstacle is what he called the separated self-illusion, the deeply ingrained belief that you exist as a separate entity apart from divine presence. This core misconception undermines almost all spiritual practice because we approach stillness from the standpoint of separation. Think about it. Most people pray, meditate, or practice stillness as if they are separate beings trying to connect with something outside themselves, Joel discovered that this consciousness cannot truly receive because it's founded on the fundamental lie of separation. It's like trying to connect to Wi-Fi while believing your device has no receiver. The revolutionary shift occurs when stillness becomes a recognition of your oneness with infinite source, rather than an attempt to bridge an imaginary gap. You're not separate from the divine presence you seek to know. You're an individualized expression of it. This revelation transforms stillness from a technique into a recognition of what already is. Behind the scenes of every spiritual tradition, this truth has been preserved by mystics who understood that the journey isn't about becoming something different, but unveiling what you already are. The illusion of separation is so convincing, so embedded in our cultural mindset, that even sincere spiritual seekers find themselves unconsciously reinforcing it through their practice. Joel's approach bypasses this obstacle by starting from the recognition of oneness rather than trying to achieve it. When you sit in stillness knowing, I and the Father are one, the experience is entirely different from sitting in stillness, hoping to eventually connect with something beyond yourself. One approach reinforces separation, the other dissolves it. This mindset shift doesn't just impact your formal meditation. It transforms your moment-to-moment experience of life. Decisions become intuitive guidance rather than isolated personal choices. Challenges become opportunities for greater awareness rather than obstacles to happiness. The entire journey of life takes on new meaning as you recognize yourself as an expression of divine being rather than a separate entity struggling to survive. If you're experiencing a sense of recognition as I share these principles, type "I am not separate" in the comments below. Now, let's explore the profound meaning behind the second part of Jesus' statement, "Know that I am God." This phrase reveals what Joel called the principle of divine alreadiness, a revolutionary insight that transforms your entire spiritual journey. This principle affirms that God's nature and presence already exists in complete fullness, whether or not human consciousness recognizes it. This revelation completely reshapes how we approach spiritual practice. Your stillness doesn't create divine presence. It simply allows you to perceive what has never been absent. It's like drawing back a curtain to reveal sunlight that was always shining. The sunlight doesn't begin when you open the curtain. It was always there, waiting to be acknowledged. The mindset shift this creates is profound. Prayer transforms from a desperate struggle to change reality into a peaceful alignment with what eternally is. You're not trying to make something happen through spiritual effort. You're allowing yourself to recognize what has always been true. This understanding releases the anxiety and strain that often accompanies spiritual practice, replacing it with a deep sense of rest in divine alreadiness. But these aren't just abstract philosophical concepts. They create tangible transformations in people's lives. Consider Helen's journey, which perfectly illustrates the power of this revelation. For years, Helen had sought financial breakthrough through affirmations, visualizations, and desperate prayers. She attended every prosperity workshop, repeated affirmations daily, and believed she was doing everything right. Yet her bank account remained empty, and opportunities seemed to pass her by. The turning point came when Helen discovered Joel's teaching on stillness. She realized that her frantic spiritual activity was actually reinforcing her consciousness of lack. Each affirmation subtly emphasized what she didn't have. With this insight, Helen made a radical change. She stopped all the spiritual techniques and instead began daily periods of quiet recognition of divine completeness. For 2 months, she simply sat in stillness for 20 minutes each day, not asking for anything, but resting in the awareness of infinite abundance as the very nature of reality. She stopped obsessively checking her bank balance and worrying about bills. Instead of focusing on what was missing, she centered her awareness on the completeness that already existed in divine mind. The results unfolded naturally. Within 3 months, Helen received an unexpected job offer with double her previous salary. An investment she had forgotten about matured with surprising returns. Opportunities appeared that had always been there, but she had been too anxious to notice. The transformation came not through frantically trying to manifest abundance, but through the receptive awareness that comes from true stillness. Helen's story reveals the behind-the-scenes mechanism of how stillness creates transformation. It wasn't magic or coincidence. It was a fundamental shift in consciousness that allowed her to align with possibilities that existed but had been invisible to her problem-focused awareness. If you've experienced a sense of striving in your spiritual practice that left you exhausted rather than fulfilled, type "ready for divine" or "readiness" in the comments below. Helen's story beautifully illustrates financial transformation, but stillness creates healing in every dimension of life. Consider Marcus, whose journey reveals how this principle applies to physical well-being. After suffering with chronic pain for 7 years, Marcus had tried everything: medications, alternative therapies, and countless healing modalities. He had prayed desperately for relief, visited healers, and attempted every spiritual technique he could find. Each time the pain returned, his faith diminished along with his hope. Subscribe now to deepen your understanding of spiritual principles that transform your daily life. Our growing spiritual family welcomes you to discover more teachings that reveal the power of divine stillness. The turning point in Marcus's journey came when he encountered Joel's teachings on stillness. He realized he had been approaching healing as a battle, constantly fighting against his condition, begging God to fix a broken body, which ironically kept his consciousness locked in the belief that something was fundamentally wrong. This revelation completely transformed his approach to healing. Instead of praying for his pain to disappear, Marcus began spending 30 minutes each day in quiet recognition of spiritual wholeness. He shifted his focus from the material body that seemed damaged to the spiritual reality where perfection is already established. This wasn't denial. When pain appeared, he didn't pretend it wasn't there, but he refused to give it power through constant attention and fear. The impact was gradual, but unmistakable. Over 6 months, the pain episodes decreased in both frequency and intensity. But something even more remarkable happened. Marcus discovered an inner peace that remained stable regardless of physical sensations. He had accessed a level of consciousness that transcended the physical condition entirely. A similar transformation occurred in Victoria's life, but in the realm of relationships. She had spent a decade using spiritual techniques to manifest her ideal partner, creating detailed vision boards, performing rituals, repeating affirmations, and praying with intensity. Yet every relationship either failed to materialize or ended in disappointment. She felt increasingly desperate, wondering if she was somehow unworthy of love. Joel's teachings on stillness revealed the hidden obstacle in Victoria's approach. All her spiritual activity, the constant visualizing, affirming, and seeking, was actually the opposite of true stillness. It was mental noise disguised as spiritual practice. Each affirmation subtly reinforced her sense of incompleteness, keeping her consciousness fixed on what was missing rather than what already was. With this revelation, Victoria made a courageous decision. She put away the vision boards and stopped all relationship-seeking activities. Instead, she began spending time each day recognizing her own spiritual completeness. Rather than seeing herself as half of a potential whole waiting for completion, she practiced living from her current wholeness. The transformation in her mindset was profound. She stopped evaluating every person she met as a potential partner and started engaging with people from a place of genuine presence. She discovered joy in her daily life without making it contingent on finding the one. Within 8 months of this shift, Victoria met Jonathan at a community event she attended simply because it interested her, not as a place to hunt for partners. If you've been struggling with healing or relationships and this approach resonates with you, share "Wholeness precedes healing" in the comments below. Now let's explore the practical methods Joel developed to cultivate true stillness. One of his most powerful techniques was a practice he called resting in the Word. This approach completely transforms traditional meditation by shifting the focus from mental effort to spiritual receptivity. In this practice, instead of mentally struggling with a problem or repeating affirmations about what you want to change, you select a spiritual truth that addresses the consciousness behind your situation and quietly abide in that truth. For example, if you're facing a health challenge, rather than focusing on the condition itself, you might rest in the truth that wholeness is the eternal nature of divine being, which is your true identity. The revelation here is that you're not using the spiritual truth as a tool to fix something. Instead, you're allowing your consciousness to marinate in reality until that reality becomes more substantial to you than the problem. This isn't mechanical repetition, but conscious dwelling in spiritual reality. The transformation occurs naturally as your awareness shifts from problem consciousness to truth consciousness. This approach prevents meditation from becoming another form of mental striving. Many spiritual practices inadvertently create more mental activity rather than less, analyzing, affirming, visualizing, and constantly checking for results. Resting in the Word bypasses this trap by emphasizing receptivity over activity. You're not trying to make something happen. You're allowing truth to reveal itself through your receptive awareness. The mindset shift is subtle but profound. Rather than approaching spiritual practice as something you do to get results, you recognize it as a state of consciousness you allow yourself to enter. This removes the strain and anxiety that often accompanies meditation and replaces it with a deep sense of rest in truth. Another hidden truth Joel discovered was the power of what he called impersonal stillness. Most spiritual practice remains limited by intense personal focus. My healing, my financial situation, my relationship problems. This personal focus actually constrains what can be received because it keeps consciousness small and self-centered. Impersonal stillness expands your awareness beyond personal concerns. In this practice, you recognize divine principles that are true for everyone everywhere, not just for you. You don't pray for your healing, but acknowledge that wholeness is the nature of all being. You don't ask for your supply, but recognize that infinite abundance is the very fabric of universal reality. This approach seems counterintuitive at first. How can focusing on universal principles rather than my specific needs possibly help me? The revelation is that when you rise into universal consciousness, your personal experience automatically begins to reflect the universal truth you've contacted. By expanding beyond the limited personal sense, you access the infinite resources of impersonal divine mind. The journey from personal to universal awareness represents one of the most significant transformations in spiritual development. It's a shift from seeing yourself as a separate entity with personal problems to recognizing yourself as an expression of universal principles that transcend individuality. If you're beginning to sense how stillness might transform your approach to challenges, share "From Personal to Universal" in the comments below. One of the most significant obstacles to experiencing true stillness is our attachment to mental pictures. When we approach spiritual practice, our human mind immediately creates detailed images of how answers should look, when they should arrive, and what form they should take. Have you noticed how specific your expectations become when you're seeking a solution? This mental imaging happens almost automatically, often without our conscious awareness. Joel discovered that these mental pictures actually become barriers that prevent us from receiving what divine intelligence is already providing. When we insist that our healing must come through a particular treatment, that our financial supply must appear through a specific channel, or that our relationship must unfold according to a predetermined script, we close ourselves to countless other possibilities. The hidden truth is that divine mind has infinite ways to provide what you need. Your limited human thinking can only conceive of a few possibilities based on past experience and current knowledge. True stillness includes holding your preferences lightly, stating your need clearly, but remaining open to solutions beyond what you could imagine. This doesn't mean you abandon all desires or preferences. It means you approach them with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. You might articulate your need or question clearly, then add silently, "this or something better for the highest good." This mindset creates the receptive state where unexpected and often superior solutions can emerge. Gregory, a businessman facing bankruptcy, discovered this principle when traditional solutions failed him. Instead of desperately clinging to his mental picture of how his business should be saved, he practiced stillness, releasing his specific demands and opening to wisdom beyond his limited perspective. The solution that eventually emerged looked nothing like what he had imagined, yet created a more sustainable business than he had before the crisis. This releasing of mental pictures naturally evolves into what Joel called living by grace, perhaps the most transformative mindset shift in the spiritual journey. This advanced practice means shifting from trying to make everything happen through your personal will and effort to recognizing that divine intelligence is already governing every situation perfectly. Living by grace represents the difference between effortful striving and receptive, allowing. Instead of approaching each day with anxiety about all you must accomplish, you move through life aware of divine presence, trusting that there is a spiritual component working through and beyond your human efforts to produce results you could never achieve alone. This doesn't mean you become passive or irresponsible. You still take appropriate action, make decisions, and fulfill your responsibilities. The difference is the consciousness behind the action. You're no longer operating from the belief that everything depends solely on you. Instead, you recognize your activity as the human expression of divine intelligence already at work. When challenges arise, instead of launching into frantic problem-solving mode, you pause first to recognize that divine mind is already present in this situation, with solutions beyond your current understanding. This momentary recognition of grace creates an opening for inspiration and guidance that transcends purely human reasoning. If you're sensing a new way of approaching life's challenges, through this understanding of grace, share Living by Grace in the comments below. As we explore this profound spiritual practice, it's important to acknowledge the very real challenges that arise on the journey. One of the most common obstacles is impatience. We live in a world of instant results, and this conditioning follows us into our spiritual practice. Many people try stillness for a few days or weeks, and when dramatic transformations don't immediately appear, they conclude that the teaching doesn't work and abandon it. This is often the very point where, had they continued, the consciousness shift would have begun to manifest visible results. Joel consistently taught that consciousness transformation takes time. You're not just trying a new technique. You're undoing years or decades of conditioned thinking, fear patterns, and deeply embedded beliefs in separation. The old consciousness doesn't dissolve. Overnight, it requires patient, persistent practice to establish a new foundation. Another significant challenge comes during times of crisis. You might practice beautifully when life is relatively calm, but the moment serious trouble hits, a health diagnosis, financial loss, or relationship breakdown, panic takes over and you forget everything you've learned about stillness. You revert to desperate seeking, anxious mental struggling, and frantic activity. This pattern is completely normal and doesn't mean you've failed. Joel himself experienced this in his early years of practice. The revelation is that you build your spiritual consciousness during peaceful times, precisely so it becomes strong enough to sustain you during storms. Each time you catch yourself reverting to panic and then gently return to stillness, you strengthen your ability to maintain spiritual awareness regardless of external conditions. Comparison represents another subtle but powerful obstacle. When you see others experiencing rapid shifts while your progress seems slower, doubt creeps in. You wonder if something is wrong with you, if you're practicing incorrectly, or if the teaching works for everyone except you. Joel addressed this directly, explaining that every consciousness is unique, carrying different layers of conditioning and different levels of spiritual readiness. Your journey is yours alone. Focus on your own unfolding rather than matching someone else's pace. Perhaps the most challenging obstacle appears when results seem to contradict spiritual truth. You practice recognizing health and symptoms worsen. You affirm abundance and financial challenges increase. The human mind interprets this as evidence that spiritual principles don't work. But Joel discovered a hidden dynamic. Appearances often intensify before they dissolve. What looks like worsening may actually be a necessary reorganization that precedes breakthrough. The caterpillar must dissolve before becoming a butterfly. These challenges don't indicate failure. They're natural parts of the transformative journey. Each obstacle, when met with understanding rather than discouragement, actually deepens your spiritual awareness and strengthens your practice. This is where true commitment reveals itself, not in the easy times, but in continuing despite apparent contradictions. If you've encountered these challenges on your spiritual journey, share "growing through obstacles" in the comments. You're not alone in these experiences. When you truly understand, "Be still and know that I am God," life's entire landscape transforms. What was once a spiritual struggle becomes a flowing dance with divine presence. Stillness becomes your natural state, not something you do, but something you are. This shift isn't about adding more spiritual practices to your already busy life. It's about recognizing the sacred nature of your everyday existence. As Joel Goldsmith discovered through decades of spiritual exploration, the stillness Jesus spoke of isn't passive resignation, but active recognition of what already is. It's the moment-by-moment awareness that divine intelligence lives as you, through you, and all around you. This recognition dissolves the artificial barriers between sacred and secular, between spiritual practice and daily living. The beauty of this teaching lies in its simplicity and accessibility. You don't need special abilities, years of intensive training, or complex rituals. You simply need to remember in each moment, to be still enough to recognize the divine presence that has never been absent. This remembrance transforms ordinary experiences into opportunities for spiritual awareness. My hope is that something in this message has sparked a recognition in you, perhaps a sense that you already knew these truths but had forgotten them. If this teaching resonates with your heart, I'd love to continue this journey together. Subscribe to join our community of spiritual explorers who are discovering the power of stillness in an increasingly chaotic world. If you found value in these insights, a simple like helps others discover this message too. And if you're walking away with a deeper understanding of what it means to be still and know, leave a comment saying, "Divine stillness awakens in me," so I know we've connected on this level. There's a video right here about the forgotten teaching of Jesus that changes everything, that perfectly complements what we've explored today. Click and continue this journey of spiritual discovery with me there. Until we meet again, remember that the stillness you seek has always been within you, waiting only for your recognition.